RCI TV comes to Germany for the first round of the World Tour here in 2022. Season 2 of the World Tour about to kick off, and it was a fantastic 6-round season last year. Lots of endurance racing all throughout the first part of the year, and we are so excited to have this back in action today, qualifying for next week's 10-hour of Nurburgring. Going to be kicking off in about 15 minutes for an open qualifying session into the famed Super Pole sessions that are always so dramatic and so tight. Every single time we've done one, we've decided to bring it back for every single race this year. And what better track to start it out on than Nurburgring, the GP circuit, of course, a 5.148 kilometer, 15 turn circuit. It has had the same layout since 2003. And this is just a fantastic circuit. We did not want to start it anywhere else other than this GP circuit. Hello, everyone. Welcome to RCI TV again for the World Tour broadcast. Qualifying for the first round going to kick off in just a few minutes. My name is Mike Jones. Joining me today would, of course, be Stewie Heilman behind the cameras. Jesse Lee joining us in the box as well. And Tim Peck, your first endurance race today. Are you excited?
I am very, very excited to see how this all unfolds. Not only is this the first endurance race I will be witnessing, but this will be the first hot lap qualifying I'll be witnessing. So I'm very excited to find out how the Super Pole works and just how these teams deal with it, really. Of course, I'm used to the normal 20-minute qualifying session, which we will also be about to see in a minute just beforehand as well. So to answer your question, Mike, I'm very, very excited what's about to happen today.
Jesse Lee, of course, me and you were participants in the broadcast for all 6 races last season. We'll likely be here for all 6 races this season as well. We have such longer races on average this season. You know, no 3-hour races. We had a couple of those last year, our shortest one being a 6-hour race, and our opening round, a 10-hour race. How do you think that's going to impact this season's levels of excitement?
Well, I think everyone's going to have to be in it for the long haul, to be completely honest with you, Mike. I think that this season is one of the more grueling championships that you can do in ACC. We open up with a big one. You know, most series either have a really long race or a really short race to start with. We just happen to open with a really long one, and it's going to set the tone. Today is the first step to getting to that race. The tone will be set in this qualifying session. It's a big race. It's a big season. It's a big day for all of these teams.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the calendar and the teams. As Stewie's giving us a tour of some of the beautiful liveries that the teams have designed. This is the Flying Hellfish car, Matt Campbell driving this one around. He's in the silver split of Split 1 here, silver class rather of Split 1. So let's talk about the calendar. Let's talk about the teams. Let's talk about the grid here today, Jesse, because we have a huge grid. We got 45 cars on the entry list. Not necessarily all of them will make it to the qualifying session. Some of these guys will start from the back and not be participating. But look at the side of that car. Let's pause just right there real quick. So we go back to the right just a little bit. So this is Stefan Zero for the GC Racing as let's go back over to the left side of the car real quick, Stewie. You can see all the names across the side of it here. This is how many names are on this team list. Look at that. They've got 5 drivers that can be participating in the championship. You got Stefan Zero, Thomas Geider, Marco Ripper, Stephen Key, and Rombach that are going to be racing for the GC Racing team. These guys already celebrating themselves. All of them German as well for the GC Racing team, of course. So they're probably happy to be home on the German circuit. But Jesse, we've got pro, we've got silver, we've got 6 races of varying lengths. Let's start talking about that. So pro and silver class here in Split 1. We did this last year. It worked out really well. We had pre-qualifying this year for it. Do you expect all the pros to be at the top of the board by the time we're done with qualifying?
Well, yes and no. You do run the risk, or the pleasure in our case, because we love seeing a team overperform in qualifying, and that is very possible with having a silver team do exactly that. In fact, we're almost accustomed to it at this point. That's none of my business, by the way, but I will say that there is a high likelihood, I've been doing the math, about a 65% chance a silver team or two will break into Super Bowl, and that's exciting, really.
Yeah, Tim. So obviously, you're very used to just having a single class on most of the races that you're dealing with in the GT4 series, because of course you have joined Jesse as well as Christian and I think Jake off and on for the GT4 Sprint series. Now 2 20-minute races, a single class in that race. Now we've got 45 cars here across 2 classes in GT3 machinery at that. I mean, do you have any expectations yourself of this multiple class split going on here?
I mean, I'm just excited to see how it turns out. We've of course done a multi-class split now for the most recent GT4 championships, and it's always very exciting when you see those splits start to merge with each other and just finding out where the line is drawn exactly. I found it interesting what Jesse was saying about the silvers getting into the top 10. And I think I agree as well. It's a high possibility that we'll see at least 1 or 2 of the silvers sneak up there into the top 10. Especially the other thing you've got to consider is the fact that there are multiple drivers on each team. So one driver may be considered pro, one driver may be considered silver, and I think it will be interesting to see which driver the teams put forward for their qualifying. Will they opt into having their fastest driver take the car for qualifying, or will they maybe think, okay, let's put in our most on pace for us driver and see if we can start somewhere in the mid-pack where hopefully we'll also end as well, instead of setting the expectation high and then really struggling to hold it for the rest of the race.
And I think a couple of those teams that we might see like that, Jesse, we're very familiar with him. Martin Lawrence, currently up in P4 in the practice session for Connection Law's racing team. A fantastic pro driver. They are classed as silver for this, which is saying something, because all those CRL drivers are damn quick drivers. But that just shows, how competitive the qualifying, the pre-qualifying for the was to see the 404 car in the silver class. And we've got multiple other cars, such as one of the FFS racing teams that is also in the silver class for this. Now they do have a pro driver on their lineup as well, of course, James Parker there. But Jesse, I feel like you've probably studied the entry list even more so than I have. Is there anything that's standing out to you so far?
I think you absolutely nailed it with that assessment. I was going to talk specifically about Connection Lost Racing being a silver team, and I was thinking that must mean that this field is stacked. And of course, there's always the argument of sandbagging and stuff like that. We don't get into politics around here. We find them frankly quite boring. But if a bump up needs to happen, I'm sure that that's something that could be discussed. I'm not sure that's the case with the 404. I just think, like you said, it is a completely stacked field. And beyond that is the sheer amount of talent that the pro field has here today. Drivers that I've not seen race in RCI maybe ever, but I am aware of because of other series that are ran. And it's going to be that kind of season. The gauntlet has been thrown down and we're still in practice. One other thing I noticed, unrelated to the lineup today, is I talk about this week in and week out here on RCI TV about not showing your cards, not showing everything that you have in practice. Normally it doesn't matter too much, but here, when there's a Super Pole at stake, if you can keep your competitors from panicking and trying to find that last second tenth, that last second speed or grip, today of all days might be the day you turn to tactics. And my personal impression is some teams are doing that right now.
Yeah, and some teams that are going to be different for this season as well. We splashed past them a moment ago with the Nissan. We have a Nissan GTR on the grid this season. Orion Race Team, Fulvio Berrezzini, Matthias Egger, one of the dominating teams in every endurance race we do, is going to be on the grid this season in a Nissan. And not only that, Jesse, they've qualified in the pro class in that thing. They got that thing down so quickly in the pre-qualifying that they managed to be in the pro class in a Nissan GTR, which of course doesn't run in the real life series anymore, and as such doesn't have the huge bop advantage that the rest of these cars have. It used to be an absolute powerhouse, of course. Godzilla at Bathurst is iconic, but here today, the Nissan just not quite as quick as the rest of these cars. But we're going to see a huge selection of cars, and minus a lot of BMWs, as you'd expect. New car, the silver class almost filled up by the BMW M4 GT3 machinery, such as your Multi-21 Racing one right here. But you know, it's something that I'm very excited to see how Orion how the Orion team does throughout the season. It's gonna be fantastic. Pidge in the chat, hello, making fun of his teammate already. By the way, he says he's trying to anger him up, make him go faster.
Of course he is. You know, there's more than one way to motivate a driver. Some people like to be talked up and give that pep talk and all that stuff, a pat on the back. Some drivers like you to sort of, challenge them, and some just like to be left alone, all things considered. And maybe Tidge knows that about his teammate. One thing that you're going to see, not so much today, but in this championship that I can't wait to see, the team dynamics. There are a lot of new teams. We're gonna go over those as we get to them. A lot more drivers. Some teams, like Mike said, have 5 drivers, which is a whole nother conversation we could get into in the 10-hour race whenever that comes along. But it's a lot of things, and it's a lot of people to more than just the one driver that you're going to see behind the wheel today. But that is the focus of the day. So I pose this back to you two. Who are you looking for today? And not necessarily based on practice if you don't want to, but who do you think has the best shot out of all of these teams, some 44, 45 plus teams? Which one has the best shot to get on pole today?
I'm a big that. Go ahead. I'll put you on the spot.
Oh no, I don't recognize a lot of these drivers, so this really is on the spot for me. Well, I'm going to base it mostly off what's happening in practice so far, as I've not seen a lot of these drivers' potentials yet. But honestly, one person who I have had my eye on is Martin Lawrence, of course, in currently running 6th actually. So I'm very excited to see how they perform. I've seen them show up a couple of times, and as you were saying earlier, a very, very, very fast driver at that. So I'd be interested to see where they place today. Honestly, I'm just excited to see where a lot of these go up. There's a couple of names that I recognise that are hovering down at the moment in around 20th position that I imagine come time for actual qualifying to start will be trying to push their way into the top 10. But in terms of who I'm looking at mostly right now, I'd like to see where Martin Lawrence can get, purely because I know what their ability is, and it'll be a good way to decide, okay, how fast is the rest of the field.
So I think, Jesse, what I'm looking at here is there's a couple specific teams that I think depend on what driver they're going to be putting in for the qualifying session, right? Because if we look at, say, the FFS Racing team that's in the silver class in the 3-2-1, if James Parker comes in and does their qualifying session, they've got a well shot to take P1 of it. But I don't think James is going to be doing the qualifying for the race. He is the pro driver on the team, and I think they've decided to throw Yarko in, who is no slouch as well. None of these drivers are, by any means. James Parker is just James Parker. But yeah, Yarko, I think, is going to come out and put down a pretty good lap in the actual qualifying session. The team I am looking at the most, though, and I hate saying this because it's the obvious answer, Stewie flashed past him a moment ago, back down in 44th position, just joined the racetrack, is Malinowski and George Boothby. We know how dominating George Boothby is. They're in the Porsche for the season as well. Malinowski was not messing around when they decided on that car for the season. Of course, Malinowski, one of the fastest drivers in the Porsche, period, and George Boothby, one of the fastest drivers, period. So I feel like it's the cop-out answer, but I'm going to go with George Boothby with Joe McCauley well within a shot.
I think that is well timed. I was just going to mention it in case nobody else did. I was going to mention that the 992 wasn't in the session, and before I could do that, they were on track. Keep in mind, that 992 for Yas Heat, they've been testing that car since last year. So not only do they have a lot of mileage in that team brand new put together. Yas Heat's not new, but the team of Malinowski and Boothby is new. They've been working on their team chemistry this winter as well. Keep an eye on them. The other team I would say to keep an eye on is the 6th place car. Michael Kunduk-Sauglu in the 123 paired up with Noble for FFS Racing. That is going to be a interesting and potentially potent racing combination in a car that you're not used to seeing up front in races. They've got a history in that car. I think they might be one of the dark horses in my pick, maybe do some damage here today in qualifying. Final few seconds of practice ticking down. Mike Jones, take it away and tell us the format for qualifying today.
Yeah, so format for each race here throughout the season will be a 30-minute open qualifying session. Again, these guys have so much time to come in and set the fastest lap possible. And we saw this last year during the open qualifying sessions, where not everybody sets their fastest lap in the first 10, 15 minutes. If you remember, Jesse, at Kyalami last year, our 24-hour, Joe McCauley came out and slapped down his fastest lap in the Bentley for the CDA NOP team right at the last second. Joe McCauley came down, took the initial pole position, if I'm not mistaken. It was either pole or P2 after being outside of the Super Pole. Came in, slapped down the fantastic time, and then they got in the Super Pole session just based on Joe's merit at the last minute. So, don't expect this 30-minute session to get boring ever. It will continue to hit all the way through. These drivers will continue to improve, finding those half-a-tenths here and there, and it will be a beautiful 30-minute qualifying session. Now, after the 30-minute qualifying session, we take a short interlude while everybody resets themselves. Then we have a 10-car Super Pole session. This will be a single lap session. That means that these guys will have an out lap as Matt Campbell goes flying off in the chicane. I'm sure we'll see plenty of that today. Super Bowl session, they will have to do an out lap, one hot lap, and an in lap. So that means that it will, not give you much, right? It is all the pressure on to make sure that you can come out, slap down a lap, and get going. And it is always so exciting to watch the Super Bowl sessions because of the pressure that these drivers have to put themselves under to do a single lap. They get released one at a time. We'll be watching them one at a time come around the track, and we'll keep you updated, of course, live as they come across. George Boothby, first one out for the actual qualifying session here, taking out the cones early, making sure that those aren't in the wake to slow him down on the hot lap. But 30 minutes of qualifying, and Boothby wants to be out first.
Yeah, he sure does. And you got to keep with tradition. You got to take the track obstacles out of the way. It's just like the tire bale at Donington. You got to get that out of the way so you can cut the corner legally and adequately so that you can make the corner how you do. I'm not sure that's what George was doing there. Maybe he was just a little too far over. But either way, they are out of the way for pretty much everybody else. And it was almost like feeding time at the trough as nearly every car streamed off of pit lane. 45 plus cars, or actually 44 cars, I should say, that have all left pit road, nearly enough. Only a handful of cars have not left, and it is going to be densely packed. My question to you now, Mike, is we have newer rules that say you can't slow down in the third sector to keep from bunching up and all that stuff. Is that in play in this qualifying session?
Yeah, absolutely, right? Because it will only be impactful during the first lap or so, right? But we need to make sure these guys, have their distance, but also we want to make sure they're not, stopping the train all the way behind them as well. I mean, if these cars start stacking up and slowing down in the third sector, Boothby's going to catch up to the back of the field really quick, right? And that causes problems for him on a hot lap. That can be stewarded against. So we need to make sure that people are, finding their own room. You've got 30 minutes to do so. If you're stuck in traffic at the moment, you've got plenty of time to come out and do it. These cars will not be out on the track the entire time. A lot of drivers will go back. They'll probably only run, if I had to say, maybe 20, 22 minutes of actual laps, if I had to guess. By the time they go back, adjust their tire pressures a little bit, maybe, adjust a couple things on the setup, et cetera, right? So I wouldn't be surprised to see these guys, dip back to the pits for a couple minutes, have a little bit of a chat with their teammate, say, hey, I think I can gain some time here. I think I can gain some time there. Oh yeah, hey, your spotter's out there going, yeah, you're clear right now. Go ahead and leave now. This is a good time to leave the pits, et cetera, right? That's all about endurance racing right there, and that's all about making sure that you have that communication between your teammate of when you should be out on track and when you shouldn't. Now, of course, Boothby here got plenty of room on his first opening lap, but Tim, you're the one that's new to the endurance side of things here. Have you done any endurance racing here with teammates to have that communication?
Yeah, so I've done some driving in the other endurance tournament that we ran, the endurance challenge that we ran last year. I'd say, yeah, personally, I didn't do a lot of qualifying, and I'm quite glad I don't because I hate the pressure. Of course, having 30 minutes to do the qualifying is a very refreshing bonus. I think I'm quite used to seeing the 10, 15-minute qualifying sessions, and that is not a lot of time to get in a good lap. Usually, that is the car goes out once, and then you basically stay out until the end. But of course, with 30 minutes now, they've got a bit of time to go back into the pits, change things up if they don't like it, maybe fiddle around with some things. And I think that's going to make this a little bit more interesting, some of the endurance qualifying that I've done in the past. But it's really nice to look at the team dynamic as well and just see how the team works. I'm very excited for the main race next week, just to start to learn how these teams drive, what drivers they sort of put some priority into, and just how the drivers get on with each other in general. So I'm very excited to see how this all turns out. And honestly, I'm watching some of these times coming down and going, wow, that is a good opening lap for 30 minutes of qualifying, a 1:53.625. That's a pretty good banker lap to have.
Yeah, I agree, and these times will continue to climb down. Legion of Racers, Rockmont here already 3/10 up on his lap. Jesse, this is a new team for us as well. Dylan Tan, the owner of this particular sign-up, he's going to be the team leader. Dylan Tan is a younger guy out of Australia, and this is one of the fastest kids in Australia. He is constantly competing in the SRO Asia Series and is near the top of the board every single time. So I'm actually pretty excited to see them and his LOR team here ready to go. Actually, Stewie's telling me Dylan Tan might actually be from Singapore, and he could be right on that. I know that he's in the SRO Asia Series, so I could be wrong, and he might be from Singapore. I apologize. I'll have to verify that one in a second. But yeah, so either way, the SRO Asia Series driver is now out here as well, Jess, and I'm glad to see them representing.
Yeah, keep in mind, they're not a new team to RCI. None of the drivers on this team are new to RCI racing, but this team as a whole, the Legion of Racers, is not a new name to us, but all of those drivers together in one team is, and that is scary, and I think it's put everybody on notice for the 889, but George Boothby answers the call. I felt like Boothby left a couple of tenths, if not more, on the table as he entered the elbow coming up to the chicane, and of course in the final curve as well. I think he got pretty much everything on that lap. New fastest lap in the group session of 53.215. George Boothby, happy about that, returns to the pit lane, and Christian there not happy with his lap as he exits the Mercedes-Benz Arena and goes back to the garage. Michael Kondaksioglu in the 123 for FFS inside the top 10. And what does Gang have in the 224? We talked about silver drivers. It's how we opened the session today. How many would we see in Super Pole right now? If it started now, which it doesn't, about half of the Super Pole field would be silver drivers. There is a lot of time left on that clock.
Yeah, this is one of the teams I'd expect to see up near the top of the grid by the end of the qualifying session. This is Joe McCauley racing with Grant Wilmot and, of course, Martin Grady, a.k.a. Titchney, the king of the plebs. Joe doing the qualifying for this team. He's currently back in P17, has not really set the most fantastic lap yet, but he's over 7.5 tenths up coming into the final corner. Lost just a little bit of time on the entry. He's going to gain about 7 tenths on this. That's going to put him down to a 54.7. That would be good enough for P3, by the way, but 5.5 tenths off of George Boothby at the top. Boothby and Rockmont for the Legion of Racers are absolutely dominating this qualifying session so far. I would not be surprised to see the rest of these times continue to tumble slowly down to the low 53s. The problem is, do we think that George Boothby or Rockmont can throw down a 52 by the end of the session? Honestly, I would not be surprised to see Boothby do a high 52 by the end of the session, just because he's George Boothby. Jarkko Torvinen for the FFS Racing Silver Class team coming across the line, promoting himself to P16 in his Lamborghini. Of course, their teammates in the 1, 2, 3, as Jesse said, were in the Super Pole session a minute ago, but so far, all the way down to P12. Once the rest of the drivers have finished their laps. Michael Kondaksioglu not on a hot lap at the moment, currently on an out lap, so he needs to get himself back up into the Super Pole session. Here's Martin Schumacher. This is the not the T3 T3 Motorsport Black 411, one of the BMWs in our Pro class. Now, this is not necessarily an oddity to see these guys in the BMW as well. Of course, Schumacher and the T3 team always driving the BMW have now, I think, really much enjoyed the M4 coming out, getting themselves a refresh off the older BMW M6. He's going to come across the line here and gain himself some time, perhaps promote himself up into the top 5 or even more so. Comes across the line. No, yeah, it was P4 and immediately demoted to P5 as the Fusion Hispania team took over the podium position in the 501 Silver class Audi.
Fusion Hispania here getting another lap in. Joe McCauley is going to finish up a lap as well. 4th on the board with a 53.7, and it's going to be a 53.4 for McCauley. That further chops into Boothby and Rockmont's lead. It's a very close affair for second place. 1/100th of a second between those two drivers, and if I was the 992, I'd start to get a little bit anxious now. I absolutely believe, Mike, that we're going to see a 52 in this session, and dare I say, it might take a high 52 to get pole here today. Svenchek in the 107, the Green Loafers Engineering team, indeed, with a very interesting livery, to say the least. Nice, I guess we'll call that camo look, and here's George Boothby, who is climbing all over the curbs here, trying to hustle that car around. And this is looking like a major lap, folks. This would be enough to be a 52 if he can get it to the line. And he does! A 152.990! The gauntlet thrown down by Yas Heat here.
Tim, welcome to George Boothby.
Yes, I'm guessing this is going to be an ongoing theme as we continue through the World Tour here, but Boothby there has set an absolute amazing lap. When you were saying earlier, will we be seeing 152, I was sitting there thinking, no, of course we won't. But Boothby has just gone and set a 152.990, and I've got to say, I am now very, very excited to watch that 992 Porsche throughout the rest of the World Tour, because I'm getting a sense here that a lot of the action will be coming from that team.
And it really will. It is constant throughout every single race that Boothby does, that Malinowski does, that any of the Yassi drivers do, right? All of these guys are so quick, but Boothby in particular, and we've talked to him about this beforehand. I mean, and Jesse and I have talked about this, off air, about how we really do think that Boothby is likely, don't get me wrong, there are fast drivers out there, and it's hard to say without them competing against each other, of course, but I think that he is likely the fastest driver in ACC GT3 racing at the moment. I don't think there's anybody else that could compete with him, level for level across a season, every single race. Don't take me wrong. We've got drivers like James Baldwin, David Tuniza, and a bunch of the drivers that are on this grid as well. But are they quite as quick as Boothby? I'm gonna be honest, I don't think so. And will that mean that his team can step up and dominate this championship? Well, we're going to find out, of course. We've got 6 months of racing to do it, but it is endurance racing. And we know, Jesse, that Boothby is fantastic at endurance racing as well as sprint racing. His traffic management skills are key in that. But endurance racing is endurance racing, and stuff happens. So do we think that he can keep it up to the top of the field, much like the Sidemax team did that he drove with one race last season in the 24 Hours of Kyalami? It was his only race he did last year. Now he's got all 6 with different teammates. Do you think that he's got a shot at the win? Well, of course he's got a shot at the win.
Yeah, he can do, Mike. They can win. FFS is a great team, and Yas Heat is a great team as well. What they both have in common is they have great teammates and a nice foundation. The thing is, though, is all teams are human in the end, and a team effort. Today, it may seem like a solo effort, and it is behind the wheel, but there's still many more teammates, engineers, etc., that we don't see on stream that are helping them with the engineering of the car, getting the lines right. Even in a session like this, think of Formula One. It's really no different here in an aspect of engineering, because it's the same thing. trying to get the car to go around the track as fast as you possibly can, and they're making adjustments. And the thing about the team sport aspect of it, in a longer race, the 10-hour race that we're qualifying for, it's going to be more than him in the car. It's going to be 40 plus other cars on the track. A lot can happen. Can it happen? Sure. They've got to stand the test of a 10-hour race. Endurance racing is about survival and pace. They definitely have the pace. Can they survive? Well, we're going to have to tune in and find out. Nick Babin for the Volante Racing Astra SimSport team. It's a mouthful of a name, but it's fifth quickest now, an improvement on the timesheet, 53.707 for the McLaren.
Yeah, Babin is doing pretty good so far to get himself into that Super Bowl session. Keep in mind that it doesn't matter what the order is of the top 10 at the end, other than bragging rights, of course. All that matters is that means you get into the Super Bowl session. So even if Boothby is 5/10 ahead at the end, he's got a single lap to do during the Super Bowl session. And if you make the slightest mistake, slide your car just a little bit, it will drop you from P1 down the order. So it's something that, these guys do need to keep in mind, that even though, Boothby's 5/10 ahead at the moment, all they need to do is beat top 10. This is this man right here, S&P Racing Esport 56 Aston Martin, currently in P10, exactly a second back. He's going to gain some time, though. 4/10 on that board, and there it is. Exactly matches P4, in fact. We see a lot of that in these 30-minute sessions.
Oh, you love it.
Yeah, we see a lot of these in this in these Super Bowl sessions and whatnot, where these guys are just matching time for time all the way up the board. This one right here, though, the T3 Motorsport car has made a slight driver change in the 411. That is no longer Schumacher in the car, Schaefer in this car, and he is currently, unless our Delta has something wrong with it, 1.6 seconds, 1.7 seconds up as he's approaching the final chicane. I don't think this is true. 1.9. Yeah, I'm pretty sure our timing board is having a bit of an issue. There's no way that he's still climbing all the way through there. So yeah, a bit of a technical issue with our live timing board, I think. But I think that this still might be an improvement for him at the very least. He is looking quick on the lap. Let's see what this ends up being here. Comes across the line. That's going to be a 53.920, so actually not an improvement. So yeah, bit of a mistake on the timing board. ACC giving us a little bit of an issue with that, but this does have the potential to continue to improve throughout the remainder of it. And Flying Hellfish, I love this livery, by the way, the Flying Hellfish livery. I actually like it.
I didn't know Charles Holden was American until just then when we showed it on camera, but everybody in chat also saw the Flying Hellfish logo earlier. Some people responded, seeing a lot of comments in the chat talking about the different drivers cheering on their driver. Go ahead. Let us know who you're cheering for today. Let us know what car you like the best as well. Custom liveries throughout the World Tour this year. RCI 2.0, ACC in the year 2022. It's going to be absolutely brilliant and very colorful indeed. A couple of drivers looking to make marked improvements. This is one of them, Martin Lawrence, in the connection lost 404.
This will be a big one.
Trying to get a nice pickup here. Trying to get out of the basement, was 39th. Will go to the top 12. 53.977. Just a huge improvement and more like it out of the 404 bunch.
So if we ignore George Boothby for a second, because I'm going to,
which I often do because he's so far
exactly
up in front of the pool.
Exactly. We have 32 cars within a second. So all the way down from P2 to P33 are within a second of each other. Actually, sorry, not even 33. It is two more cars than that, 35. All the way down to the 102 turn one car, Oscar Sandberg, are within a second of each other. So these guys are just like, you get a 10th, that could be 6 positions or more, realistically, in this qualifying session. And that's the beauty of these 30-minute qualifying sessions with these pro split drivers, is that these guys will fight and fight and fight and fight all the way down to the wire. Like George Boothby, he's still out doing laps. why not, right? It's just practice for him at this point, I feel like. Joe McCauley is up on his lap a little bit as well. He's looking at taking P2 away as he comes through sector 1 of the track, so he's got plenty of track left to cover. But he wants to take over P2 away from Rockmont and the Legion of Racers car, just for bragging rights at this point. I'm pretty sure that anybody probably within the top 3 at this moment are locked into the Super Bowl session. I would be surprised to see them knocked out of the top 10. But hey, that's what endurance racing is all about, is these drivers surprising us, right? This is another T3 Motorsport car. This is T3 Motorsport White in the number 80, currently in P41, but they're about a half second up on their lap, and that will shuffle them all the way up into the high 20s if they can get the power down. He lost a little time coming out of that corner, so he'll go to P37, but that just shows he's got time to gain and get himself up into the top 20 to compete with his teammate further up the order. Couple cars in the pit lane, Jesse, but a lot of them still out on track. And again, I feel like that's just part of what we're going to see. You know, coming into the pit lane briefly, coming out of the pit lane, and you know, sitting in there, adjusting your pressures, talking to your teammate, and figuring out where you can come out. By the way, Ada Esports team back for another round. I don't know if you caught this one.
No, I didn't. Ada Esports back. Carlo in the car trying to get the position marker up a little bit. And in fact, will do with that lap. A 54.125. Good enough for 19th place. Always nice to see Ada back in the championship. And I hope they're running all of the rounds. I wouldn't imagine they're signing up just to run one round. So nice to see them here again. A lot of familiar names I haven't seen in a while. We saw Martin Schumacher earlier, and I was just thinking when we were watching him, of course he's now gotten out of his BMW, but I was thinking, I was like, I haven't seen Martin in a while. It's been, well, since sometime last year. Lovely to see the returning drivers. Here's Peter in the 107 Green Lotus Engineering car trying to get some lap time as well. Everybody now at the bottom is everybody everywhere is improving, but trying to stay out of the bottom few and get all they can. What does Crowbar have? And nothing on that particular occasion. Lower by just about a 10th. Tim Peck, I have to ask, your first qualifying session, as we've documented earlier, anything catch you off guard or surprise you yet in this session?
Honestly, I was expecting a little more people to be safe by now. Of course, we've got George Boothby up front with a 152.9, but realistically, I'd say Boothby's the only person here who I am 99% confident will make it into the Super Bowl.
Only 99 though.
Only 99. There's that 1% chance that 10 other drivers can come out with a 152. But I am very interested to see, as we gain now into the final 10 minutes of qualifying, I'm very interested to see if there's anyone else who just in that lap that will just secure them the position. Because it's, as you were saying earlier, Mike, down for about 34, 35 places, they're all within 1 second of each other, and it only takes a couple of attempts improvement to put yourself 1 or 2 places, even 6 places up. So I'm very excited to see if anyone else can just sort of secure that position, because honestly, I say from the 2nd place downwards, you can't rely on being safe at this point. You've still got to keep pushing, just hope that no one else improves by that little bit more.
Of course, the 56 did take over P2 very recently here as well. So one of the Aston Martins now up near the top of the grid. That's the S&P Racing Esports team. One of the main drivers of that one that everybody will recognize, Ivan Shermatinsky, is driving in that car. However, right now, Sherpenin is motoring that one around. Schaefer is going to come across the line. We were just watching him do his lap, promotes himself up into P6 with a slight improvement. Again, the T3 teams have room for improvement. The T3 White, definitely their silver class team back further on the grid, hoping to get into the top 20. Schaefer, though, he's trying to lock in his Super Pole prospects. Less than 8 minutes to go out of this 30-minute session, and these guys still improving. We're definitely seeing less green on the board than we were 15 minutes ago, guys, but still green up on the board, through, especially through the mid-pack, and these guys near the top of the grid are just gaining hundreds or thousands of a second each lap just to crawl themselves up slowly and slowly and slowly. So far, though, we got 3 silver cars that are going to get into the Super Bowl. Stefan Zero is in P11. He wants to gain just that touch more time. to get himself up in the Super Bowl session. But so far, the bubble team being Brenham in the 67, well, he's got to be nervous.
I tell you a couple of other teams that are going to be nervous. Of course, there's no live stewarding as such for qualifying, but there is race directors and race direction, and they can issue penalties for violations. We mentioned earlier that you're not allowed to slow down to get a gap in Sector 3. It can cause issues, obviously, and they're not allowed to do that. I don't think that's what happened here, however. There was an altercation between the silver number 44 and the Pro 70. 5-place grid penalty for car 70 for taking out the 44, but a warning for car 44 for blocking the 70 while the 70 was on a fast lap. So you hate to see that happen in a big qualifying session like this, Mike, but a grid spot penalty.
Yeah, and in the end, that's what the stewards are here for, right? We're going to, of course, have live stewarding all throughout the season, as you'd expect. Actually, all 4 splits will receive live stewarding here for the War Series. Of course, the split one having the race control access to come in and report any sort of penalties they need to at any given time. Down Team Barrier make his way, trying to get himself up into the top 10. That was Joe McCauley passing, that he was going past Joe McCauley on an outlap at the moment. Area going to come across line. This will be likely a small improvement for him, but is only up into P11. So
No.
so close to hitting and being that P10 bubble. Got a little bit more in him before he's done. But yeah, the stewards will be able to provide these penalties when they need to. And the 70 who took out the 44 earlier on, well, that is a grid penalty for them. Now, keep in mind, that will apply after the Super Bowl session. So if they're in the top 10, they will still participate in the Super Bowl session and then get demoted 5 points at the start of the race. So it will not happen until after that at this point. 5 minutes of qualifying left, guys. Tim, what you think? Can anybody else get up? I see Matt Campbell up almost a half second.
There are a lot of people lingering right now. I'm currently looking at Stuart Clark, who is up on their lap time by about a 10th of a second, and that, I believe, enough to slot themselves into that 10th place slot there. I'm looking at Campbell as well, actually, and I believe validated their lap because it's gone a little wacky that time slot again, but I might be wrong here. We might be about to see a big improvement for them as they now enter the 7/10 of a second up on their time, but it's still upwards. So I'm wondering if the Campbell time has dropped here, but either way, I'm looking at Clark, who has just slotted in their lap, and they've gone to 11th here. So it's not quite going to be enough to get into that top 10. They will have to continue on a little bit longer. And we've just under 4 minutes now left for qualifying. They've only got 2 laps left to do it. So I tell you what, I think if you want to get in a lap, you need to get it in now.
I like what I saw from Matt Campbell just there. Matt Campbell knows that you can't slow down in the 3rd sector. There's no rule to get slowing down in the 2nd sector. And coming out of the hairpin, that's exactly what Campbell did. Saw the car behind him, didn't want to start a lap with a car there that potentially could interrupt his lap, let them go, stayed slow for a moment before he got to the Schumacher S's and continued on. I love that strategy. That is one of those knowing the rules moment. Well, I'm not in Sector 3 yet. I'm going to let this guy go, get myself an advantage, and get the Fighting Hellfish a chance to get a better starting place position. Riding on the splitter with Ryan Yee, the Madhouse Racing 818 BMW, currently leading a train of BMWs near the back half of the field. Be on a quicker lap at the moment. It's just got a couple of corners to keep it right. That was a pretty perfect, albeit a bit tidy chicane there, the final curve, and onto the front straightaway. Looking for an improvement for Madhouse Racing, but the question is just how far up will it be? Only a couple of spots, but a couple of spots is a couple of spots on 154.262.
Yeah, while we were watching him come around, this is the man right here that just promoted himself up into the Super Bowl session. Michael Conesioglu for the FFS Racing 123 Lamborghini has promoted him up to P9. A 153.815 is the P9 time at the moment. So we're running high 53s to get into the Super Bowl session. Now, I'm looking at the board below him, and there is danger coming. Jan Gang, Valentin Berrier, as well as Martin Lawrence are up on their laps, and there is Jan putting himself up into P10. So close to my to
Nearly
Michael there.
commentators cursed him there, Mike.
Almost, but Berrier, he's going to come across the line as well. Couple tenths on his board at the moment. This might send the 224 back out of the session, and it
There
will.
it is.
That'll put Condesiaglo to the bubble. Michael is in the pit as well. He will not set another lap. P2 out on the track, P1 out on the track. I'm looking up and down the mid pack here. Matt Campbell is well up on his lap. Now, this guy is 7/10 up. I don't know if this is an actual valid lap or not. I think he just invalidated, actually, because there goes the times. Yeah, he just invalidated. I'm pretty sure that he was very well up on his lap by at least a few tenths. He did end up setting a 57.017, so he was not up on his lap. Just another little sector bug on our timing board, unfortunately. But he will cross the line with enough time to make one more lap. Campbell does have it in him to gain about 5/10. They did do a driver swap in that car. I think the 444 team realized, wait a minute, maybe we're not going to make the Super Pole session, and put Campbell in that car and said, okay, Matt, go get me into that top 10. And that's where Matt is hunting for at the moment. Here's the teammate of Michael Condesiaglu, the FFS Racing 321 Lamborghini. His teammate is currently very nervous, sitting on the bubble of the Super Pole session, but Yarko all the way down to P26. Not where FFS wants to be starting the race next week. He is a couple tenths up on his lap, though, and a couple tenths will put you up into the top 15. He's going to enter in to the final section of the track now. Here's the chicane, and then around Coca-Cola Curve, he will come for the 321 Lamborghini. Plenty of time here. He lost just a touch coming through the chicane. He's going to continue to lose time actually coming out of the final corner. It's only going to be about a half a tenth improvement. It's enough for 5 positions, though. A half a tenth, 5 positions up into P22. Jarkko Torvinen, I think he's going to be disappointed that he's at least not in the top 15. But that said, either way, it's a silver class car. 1, 2, 3, 4. What is that? P7 in silver class. I could live with that.
Yeah, I think that's okay. And in addition to getting more than halfway up the field with that lap, especially out of the basement, where you don't want to be if you're a silver car, you want to be as close as you can. He was the first car, was Torvinen, to finish their laps. Lucas there is going to slide out and completely end their qualifying session. That Ferrari will go no further. Here's Nicholas Bosselet in the 137 Porsche, trying to improve. 19th currently on the board. But as Mike just said, a couple of tenths would be good enough to get him inside
this is
the
big.
top 10. It's going to be big. How big is it going to be?
Ooh.
How about 7th? A 53.697, and that puts the Weishite team and Nicholas Bosselet in Super Pole.
Yeah, so that bounces FFS Racing 123 to P11. That will be the final qualifying position for them at this point. The pit check here for the Boss Esports team, not enough in him to get up into the top 10. So Michael Condesiaglu will be, I think he's going to be a little disappointed at that one. This is, of course, the SRO America winner 2 seasons in a row. He's not going to be happy with being in P11, being bounced out of the Super Bowl session. But also, it means less pressure on him as well, because, of course, when we go into that Super Bowl session, it will be all of that pressure there. But I believe, guys, it might be about time to prep for that Super Pole session. I'm going to go over to the race control box briefly, make sure everything is set up, and let you guys talk about that mad session that just happened.
Results of qualifying confirmed here. George Boothby put his 992 on through to Super Pole. This is normally the part where I would say on pole position, but of course, the top 10 get completely reset. And we'll start with 10th place is how it'll work, and go to 9th, 8th, 7th. George Boothby, if he is the one in the car for Super Pole, I believe they are allowed to change drivers between sessions. If he chooses, he will be the last car on the track, will the 992, but has purple every single sector, a 52.990, the only car in the 52s. Quite a gap back to second place with the 56 of Sherpinen, who did a whale of a job to get that Aston V8 up into that spot. Rockmont settles for third, but it was a very close third in the 889. Macaulay qualified fourth in the 18 Bentley. And of course, in fifth place, our very first silver driver, the only silver driver to make the Super Pole in the 501 Audi. Very close, all 10 drivers moving on. Tim Peck, it was very close from second on back. We have one silver driver in Super Pole, and it is going to be one and done for all of these teams. How would you prepare for something like this?
Well, there is only so much preparation you can do when it is just one lap. Yeah, you've got to give it your absolute all. So basically, as soon as you leave the pit box to do your outlap, you need to make sure you're in the zone straight away, that you are 100% comfortable with that car. Because if you mess up that one lap where it counts, that will put you right at the bottom of the board. There are a couple of surprises, honestly, that I want to talk about here, Jesse Lee. One of which being the silver car that made it in the 501 Audi driven by Bugatti. That lap was set very, very early on in the session. I believe it was set just about 10 minutes in. So they were sitting on that lap for a good 20 minutes, and luckily for them, it was enough to keep them up there in the top 10. So a big well done to that team there. Also, FFS Racing, I was expecting to be in this top 10 right up until that final lap. It looked like they were going to be in it as well. So there's probably a couple of people here who are a little disappointed with how that session went. But the one thing I can say is if you're not in the Super Bowl, the best place to start will be 11th. It will just give you a nice, clear look at all the cars ahead. And, well, it's the most ideal situation, really. You're basically on pole for the ones that don't have the stress of doing the Super Bowl. But going back to what you were saying about how do you prepare for your Super Bowl lap, honestly, you just need to make sure you are absolutely in the zone and comfortable by the time you get to it. I think it's all about the outlap, Jesse Lee.
Very good point. And something else we have to clean up from qualifying, as we told you earlier, the stewards gave a 5 grid spot penalty to Volante Racing. That's the number 70 McLaren with Babin behind the wheel. There was an altercation with the 44 car. The 70 got a 5 grid place penalty. And you may be thinking, Jesse, doesn't that bump them out of Super Pole? No, no, that doesn't bump them out of Super Pole. It's 5 grid spots to wherever they qualify. They made it to Super Pole. They haven't qualified yet. Just setting up the Super Pole session as the group stage is done. About 34 cars are qualified in for the race, 11th on back. 10 cars will go on to a 1 lap shootout. We will go in reverse order of where they qualified in this session. 10th place goes first place goes last. You get one shot to take the pole for the race in just 1 week's time. The 10 hour of Nurburgring, the first of 6 rounds in RCI's World Tour 2022. Last year, it was absolutely off the chart. You never knew what was going to happen. There were many battles despite some obvious discrepancies throughout the field in pace, but it just didn't seem to matter. The crucible of motorsports is a very demanding mistress, and it was very fun to watch this year. The things that I've noticed, Tim Peck, the field very close.
I I'm in awe, Jesse. I can't wait to see how this session turns out, and you will have to catch me up on exactly when it's going to start the Super Bowl because I'm a little bit confused as to how this is all happening. I believe you mentioned earlier that we start with the 10th driver, so the 992 Porsche will be the first to take a shot at their Super Bowl lap, and then we'll move up through the respective positions, give them all a chance to rearrange. And honestly, I'm just excited to see how they've all dealt with it. I believe Boothby is now out of the car as well and has switched with a separate driver. So it'll be interesting how they deal with it as well. A lot of people actually, I'm seeing completely different names to what I was about, well, 30 seconds ago.
That is a good point.
They
That is a
have,
good point. I mentioned that they're allowed to. I felt like they were allowed to do that. You're allowed to do that in the session. You're also allowed to do that between the two sessions, between group qualifying and Super Bowl, and I warned everyone about that because I thought there was the possibility of that happening. George Boothby, his box is ticked for the day. He's got his car into Super Bowl. He's handed it off to Fast Pasta Malinowski, who's known as Tortellini on the internet. That's why we call him Fast Pasta. Malinowski's in the 992. Now it's his job, who hasn't driven in that session. It's his job to take the pole position for the race. No pressure, right?
That's a lot of pressure to have, especially just being thrown straight into it. So we'll see where they manage to put themselves. And I would be interested to know where the thought is between it. Like we were saying, a lot of these drivers have been switched up now. I think about half of the top 10, so 5 of these cars, have now got a separate driver in, one that they have just used for the 30-minute session. So it'll be interesting to see where these guys are going to place. I'm wondering if there is some sort of tactic behind it, or if they're just saying, hey, let's throw someone different in the car for the Super Bowl and just see how you get on. But honestly, Jesse, I am very, very excited to see how this turns out. I'm just going to take a minute to sort of pick out the manufacturers of the cars that are here currently, because one thing that I like to look at is how the cars are performing across the tournament. And honestly, it's quite a big mix here. We've got 2 McLarens, 2 BMWs, 3 Porsches, and then a Bentley, an Audi, and Aston Martin. So there's not really been one dominant car throughout this entire session. That kind of surprises me.
That is such a good point you made there, and I was going to mention that earlier. I got sidetracked, but you're absolutely right. Look at the manufacturer representation we have here. We got a couple of BMWs, a couple of Porsches, but we also have a couple of McLarens, a BMW, and a Bentley or excuse me, an Audi rather, and a Bentley and an Aston as well. Qualifying getting underway here. Mike Jones, 92 or the 972 on the clock. Take it.
7-2 going to be our first car out for the Super Bowl session. Of course, qualified in P10. They will be released in reverse order. That means the 972 up first, the 992 with either Malinowski or George Boothby in the car will go last. That means all the pressure is on these 2 cars here. Having the pressure of setting the first lap and having the pressure of setting the last lap. Different types of pressure, guys, but pressure nonetheless. The Giga Chad Racing Team, Valentin Berrier, Max Wajna, couple of the fastest drivers in the Porsche, minus Malinowski and George Boothby perhaps, have the pressure put onto them to set the first one. And here's what it is. I think, Tim, you said this earlier before I dipped in the race control box. The outlap is going to be so key here for these drivers because they have to use one single lap to warm up their tires, right? And now, especially with the new tire model that has been put on these cars, your tires don't heat up after a single lap. You usually need to do 2, maybe 3 laps to get those cars, get those brakes, get those tires up to temperature. And I think that that's going to be the biggest part of this right here for Valentin Berrier. Making his way into Sector 3 of the track now, and we're going to see what this lap will bring for the 972. I would expect it to be a very mid-pack time, if I'm being quite honest, but Berrier often will surprise and impress us every single time he's out on the track. When he's put under pressure, he will hit his marks and he will, nail the apexes through the corners. And as he's coming around the Coca-Cola curve, Jesse Lee, do you want to take us around Nurburgring for the first time in the Super Bowl session?
Absolutely. Valentin Berrier driving for the Giga Chad team, the 972 Porsche, qualified in 10th place, but because qualifying was so very close, they could end up anywhere as they drive down into the very tight and tricky turn number 1. Solid clip of the apex there. Didn't quite go as far out to the side as you normally would see a car. A little bit of trouble in the Mercedes-Benz Arena, which is common with the Porsche as well on the flat track, but well held and controlled through the arena section. Now we start to fall away, going downhill all the time, down into the hairpin. But before we get there, a tight 90 left that actually is more of a sweeping corner than you might think it is. Another very tight 90 right and down into what is loosely refer to as a corner, but most will refer to as a straightaway. The lap, very good so far. Nice and tight as we go into the hairpin. Oh, a little bit of a bobble there by the driver of the 972. Valentine struggling to get the car to grip in the hairpin. Now up the S's, clip the apex on the outside, then smash the curb on the inside and straight line the rest of the S's. Well held there, although a bit tighty, might I say. The left-hander again with the same issue, struggling for grip as you hit the curb, and now down through the final couple of curbs and up to the infamous chicane. You can very easily throw your lap away by hitting the curbs too hard here, or in fact going over them too far and invalidating. Nicely cut there. A little bit of curb on the exit, exactly like you draw it up. The final curve onto the front straightaway here keeps it tidy, runs out nicely, and will come to the line under the gantry, and it will be a 53.940, your first time. And that was a decent lap, you have to say, but albeit a bit beatable.
Yeah, a bit beatable for sure, but a 53.9 on a single lap when your tires aren't necessarily 100% up to pressure should be a dang good banker lap. I expect these to probably drop into the mid threes, maybe low threes if somebody really hits that lap, but not a bad lap for the Giga Chad Racing team to start with. They, of course, were P5 overall in the pre-qualifying at Kyalami and Monza that we had across the 10-lap stints. But now Team SMR is going to be up, the first BMW that will find the grid in their 715, Tim.
They've had a clean couple of first corners here, which is good, although it looks like they were sliding a little bit as they came round the third corner here. Into the fourth, they managed to hang on to it though, and it's looking really good so far. What I'm just looking for really here is someone who's going to drive the car to the absolute limit, but not to the point where they're driving over the limit. Coming down through turn 5, it was nice and clean. You can hear a little bit of resistance coming out the car on each of these corners, but honestly, so far, Alexander in Team SMR has done an absolutely brilliant job, and it's looking like this is going to be a very solid lap. Coming down to the hairpin now, we saw the previous driver struggled a little bit here and lost the car slightly, but it looks like that will not be the case for the 715 car as they managed to make that look fairly easy. Now this is one corner that I did want to talk about a little bit more. It is the S's, of course, and this is the one where it's either you make or break the lap. You have to absolutely send yourself through it at the top speed you can and hope you don't lose the car completely, and they've just managed to do that. They've carried so much speed through there. You have a very minimal chance where you can just lift off the throttle slightly, or most ideally, stay on it. Coming up through turn 11, they've hit the gravel on the side of the road slightly, which will slow down their car at the beginning of the straight here, but for the most part, it's not going to play a huge role in the outcome of this lap, as they will be able to get up to speed just before the chicane, which again, you have to really throw yourself through, making sure you don't take the car off the track here. And I've got to say, as far as lap goes, this is pretty standard. We're coming around the final hairpin now, a nice exit. We will see exactly what time they have set and whether it will be enough to beat the 972 Porsche before them. It wasn't quite enough, and actually a 154.8, probably not ideal for the 715 BMW there.
Yeah, and that just really goes to show how volatile it can be. It can look nice and tidy, but is it fast is the question. This isn't split 2, split 3, split 4. This is split 1s. It needs to be tidy and it needs to be fast. And unfortunately for the 715, not able to get it done here in the qualifying, in the Super Pole qualifying session. However, now we go to Volunteer Racing, Asterisk Sim Sports number 70, the only, or the first McLaren that's going to take the Super Pole session. Now, Jesse, I would expect Babin here to likely throw down a time to potentially beat Berrier. He was like very quick during the open session.
Well, he needs to be for a couple of reasons. He's got that 5 grid place penalty, so ideally he'll set on pole and start 5th. It's never going to be where he qualifies. He just needs to get in a position where he loses minimum time. He's going to lose 5 spots regardless, but the further you qualify up the grid, the better starting position you have. Nick Babin very tidy through the arena and the first sector of the racetrack. Looks very workmanlike. It doesn't look like he's pushing too awfully hard. It is, however, doing everything he needs to do, the car, and hitting all of the curves that you would expect to hit on the way into and out of corners. This might be just about the quickest looking sector 1 and 2. Goes a bit wide there, but that was on purpose, folks at home, because he wanted to get a straight shot out of the corner, maximize speed, climbs all over the curbs in the Schumacher S's, and now nearly touches the dirt on the inside, but does an excellent speed. Not quite a straight line as you would like it to have been, but that might have been the fastest we've seen it done today. Absolutely flying through this section of the track now, taking the curbs and the track with ease. The car very well planted, no counter correction or oversteering at all. This car very balanced around this race course, and you're seeing it live through his steering inputs. A couple of tricky corners left to go, up to the chicane, a left and then a right. Oh, had a little bit of a bobble there. Had to regather that, but after he regathered it, he turned it into a beautiful corner, and Nick Babin might be heading to provisional pole with this lap. We'll have to see, and is a 53.917 for Nick Babin, the Volante Racing Astra Simsport team, doing wonders here.
Yeah, that McLaren, it did not surprise me. He barely rivaled Barrier with that time, but did get it into the 53s. And now, of course, we go to one of the other Porsches on the grid, the Weishite Racing Team 137 Bosselet in this car. Tim, he took into the qualifying, or into the Super Pole session right at the last moment as we ended that 30-minute open session. So the question being, do we think that they can beat Barrier in the 972?
We'll have to see what they do throughout the course of this lap. Already they're looking fairly strong as they come through the first set of corners here, and again it's just about who can push the car to the end the most. It sounds like they had a little bit of problems getting the car to just turn right at the speed they wanted to there, but again they've held it together, and until we see them come across the line we're not going to have a good idea as to what the time is going to be exactly here. It's looking like they were just getting through those corners again, picking up a little bit of curb on the inside there, and with the recent changes that have been made, great to see. You want to try and avoid the curbs a little more than you previously used to. Of course, the aim of the game before was take as much curb as possible. It helps you to get across that corner, but now it can really quickly unsettle the car as we come through the hairpin, which I'd say marks about halfway through the track. And so far it's looking clean. Coming through the S's, that looked a little bit slow to me. I don't know what you guys thought about that, but I'm wondering if they dropped a little bit of time there. It looked like they had to slightly lift to readjust where the car was going there. And to me, this looked like a fairly standard lap. Will it be enough to beat the current times on the board? I'm not sure. I think they're most likely going to slot into third here, but as you said, only just managed to make the Super Pole, came in right at the last second, so possibly here they're just looking to see where they can place. And I'm a little surprised at the times that have come through so far at the moment, because they're a little slower than I was expecting. I was expecting a little bit more out of some of these cars, but so far this has looked like a fairly good lap. As they come around the final corner, we're going to see exactly where they've managed to place themselves. I'm going to put a gamble around third place, and they're about to cross the line now. It will be third place, just 3/10 off Barrier ahead, and I've got to say, a very good lap out of Boisliet there.
Bosselet, of course, for the Weishite Racing 137, and now over to the T3 Motorsport Black team. This is the pro entry of T3 Motorsport, our second BMW going to take to the qualifying session. This is German right here. He's on home turf. That might give him an advantage, Jesse. I don't know, but the 411 of Schumacher, Schaefer, and Radizi, they're putting Schaefer in the car, and not Schumacher, which surprises me a bit because, of course, Schumacher, such a beautiful participant in our Super Pole sessions for last year, but they're putting their trust in Schaefer today.
They sure are. Schumacher did the early driving in the group stage. Schaefer got into the car and put the car into Super Pole. It wasn't very tidy, his arena section. The car slid out from under him a little bit. It's hard to tell how much that actually hurt the time. I don't think it would have hurt it too much since it was slow speed corners anyway. But despite that, continuing on and completely going to the second lane there, didn't try to diamond off the corner at all, just driving around the bowl, so to speak, through that section and getting all of the curbs. Does he make it to the curb on the left? No, he doesn't. Playing it a bit safe is how I feel this lap has gone, as it hasn't been too aggressive, but it also looks pretty quick as well, as he's coming off the curb there and smashes the one on the outside of that. And now just a couple of turns left. How will the big BMW that sometimes seems to struggle in the chicane How will it deal with it here on this occasion? The only shot that T3 Motorsport Black has, that looks a bit tidy, but also a bit safe as well. That's the key for me from this lap. A little bit of a slide there in the Coca-Cola curb, and now on to the front straightaway. Where will this put him? It's going to be pole. I was wrong the whole time. A 53.687. You know what Top Gear used to say? Sometimes when it looks slow, it's fast, and that's exactly what happens for T3.
And now our only silver class entry after the pole sitter just got taken over by Schaefer, and the silver class now, he's just out here. I feel like he's just happy to be here. He already knows he's got pole position points in his class, because no matter what happens, unless he for whatever reason receives some sort of steward's inquiry for what happens on the track in the super pole session, he will indeed take pole position in silver. But he wants to put as many pro cars as possible between him and his next rival in the silver class by the time the Super Bowl is over. This is Fusion Hispania's Pagani in our only Audi.
And so far the lap has looked fairly okay. As you said, they are just happy to be here right now, so do not have any pressure of pulling out the best lap that they possibly can. Despite that though, they have looked very, very strong coming through the first sector here as they approach the hairpin. And honestly, all I've got to say about this car is they looked very, very strong with their lap that they did in the quali beforehand. But I will say they set that lap very, very early on. And in terms of consistency, I'm not 100% sure how consistent they were. So this will be the real test of can they pull that same lap that they pulled in the previous quali out of the bag again. And so far it's looking fairly good. We're just coming up through the end of this sector here. We've got basically a straight to go after this final corner. And honestly, they've been looking incredibly strong as this Audi continues up from here. And Audi, not one of the cars I'd have thought would have been doing particularly well here at the Nurburgring, but Pagani has made it work so far as they're coming up to the chicane. This can be where you make or break a lap, remember. And well, it looks like they've made the lap there as they've carried a lot of speed through that without losing the car in the slightest. Coming up around the final hairpin, slight bit of loss of grip there as they entered it, but will manage to hold the grip as best as they can on the way out. Haven't picked up any gravel on the edge, and that will be enough to put them into fourth. So the one silver car in this split, I tell you what, they have done a phenomenal job there and will have put another 2 pro cars between them and their nearest rival so far.
154.0, nothing to shake your head at, all said and done, especially from a silver class car. However, this will be the FMJ team. I'm not even going to say it, Jesse. This will be the FMJ team now coming across the line to start their hot lap. Joe McCauley, Martin Grady, Grant Willamont will take this car around the track for the season. However, Joe McCauley, the one doing the qualifying for this. Now, Tidge, of course, a huge, huge fan of the Bentley, and they've brought it back for the endurance season, Jesse. Can Joe take the pole, though? We've seen him be strong in these sessions.
You sure have, and this is going to be an interesting season for this team. Joe McCauley, Tidge in the bunch, and right now it's all on Joe's head right now. The Bentley, the only Bentley in the session, trying to make lap time, has a legitimate shot and claim to pole today. Only has to do a 53.67 to get pole. It sounds so simple. I promise you it isn't. And the car clipping the apexes perfectly without climbing all over them here, trying to maximize the exits and entries of all of the corners. That is common with the Bentley. You don't want to get up on the curbs too much here. What you want to do, though, is straight line as much as you can, running out here, clipping as much as the big curbs as you can, though, because you want it to send you back onto the racetrack, and it also provides you with a little extra runoff room to maximize. Final big hurdle of the lap. How do we handle the chicane here? Oh, and it's going to be a rough one, I'm afraid, as that wasn't quite as tidy as you've seen from some other cars. But sometimes it doesn't matter on the timing sheet how pretty it is, as long as you get through there quite quickly indeed. Second place for Joe McCauley and the number 18 Bentley, a 53.855, the mark for the 18.
Not what I expected out of Joe, to be honest. I was expecting somewhere around a mid-53, but still not a bad lap, and it will be P2. I don't think it will last on P2, as now we're getting into the top end of the group session. This is the Legion of Racers car who looks so strong in the group session 10. Of course, Malinowski had everything to say about it, but this 8.8 and Rockmont machine, he was looking very quick and very consistent across his laps. This will be the Super Bowl lap for him already through the arena section. What's he going to have in it?
And as you said, they have been looking very, very strong already. The second McLaren to be taking on these qualifying session. The first McLaren currently sitting very nicely in third place there, so they'll be looking to put 2 McLarens very high up if possible. But so far, there's been a brilliant looking lap so far, and maybe a little bit too wide for my liking there on the exit of turn 6, but it's still looking like a very strong lap regardless as we approach the hairpin now. And I've got to say, one of my favourite liveries this season is absolutely on this car. I am loving the purple there.
Yes, it's purple.
Yeah, especially
It is
as
indeed.
it goes through the hairpin, and it's just a great looking car, and I can tell you two both agree with me. Coming up into end of sector 2 here, we just got one more corner of the curve, and it's again looking very, very clean and consistent so far. This McLaren just looks like it's stuck to the track as well as it possibly could, which is exactly what you want in the McLaren. Very strong in each of those sweeping corners there, and I've got to say, possibly one of the best laps we've seen of the Super so far. I think it has the potential at the moment to put it on pole. How much time they've dropped throughout the lap, I do not know yet, as we're coming through the chicane. A little bit bumpy from there, but managed to hold it together. Actually almost went slightly too wide, which almost invalidates the lap there, but they haven't done that, and they've gone again wide through this hairpin, so maybe getting a bit nervous as they come through the final set of corners. And has it been enough to drop them back a little bit on the time? It has. It has knocked them all the way down to 6th there, so what initially started as a very strong looking lap has not been the ideal performance for the 889 McLaren.
And that's gonna struggle right there at the end to know that you botched your lap right at the end, bouncing off the curb a little too much and then going just a little deep into that Coca-Cola curve. Gonna cost them all the way down past the middle of the top 10. And of course, we're not done yet. 2 cars left to go. SMP Racing Esport, who finished P2 in the group session after a beautiful lap by Sherpenin. And you know, this is something that this Aston Martin is a very consistent car to drive. So as long as he can keep it steady, as you can often with this Aston Martin, should be a good lap, Jess.
Danila Sherpenin has the mountain of a task to do. Take down Yas Heat in the 992. They have the best shot to do it, maybe one of the only shots to do it here in the 56 SMP Racing Esports Aston. I think they have a shot with Sherpenin behind the wheel. It has been very fastidious, very tidy, and very quick the first sector of the track. Will it be enough? We won't know until we see everyone else run. Will it be quicker than the 411, who currently sits as your pole sitter? On top of that, I want to go back to Babin for a moment. Remember, they have the grid penalty. They've done so well in qualifying. They are going to stay inside the top 10 for race 1. They could have been 15th if they would have qualified last. They haven't done. Excellent job to them. But back to SMP, back to the 56. This lap is looking very nice indeed. What will it be on the clock when we get back to the stripe? I fear it all depends on this chicane. How hard does Sherpenin hit it? Pretty darn hard. Very nice cut of the corner there. Don't mess it up now. Cuts it very close around the Coca-Cola curve. This could be a contender. This could be it. What does SMP have to the line? It is provisional pole. A 53.617. Excellent job. 1 man to go. Yas Heat, George Boothby versus the clock in the field. Mike Jones, take it away.
Looking at the brake markers on the left side, he's looking for about 75 meters before he's going to dive into turn 1 on the brakes. Porsche so good on the brakes, always has been. George looking nice and tidy in through turn 1, catching that apex all the way down. Little loose there as he comes through arena, but that's to be expected in this Porsche. You see Boothby do this all the time when he's coming through corners. He never hardly loses any time on it, running as wide as possible out of the arena section, then down in to Sector 2. He's closing pretty hard on the 56 as well. 56 needs to get themselves moving. George Boothby train is coming around the hairpin here, and he's going to, or no, sorry, the hairpin coming out. That's the forward curve coming down into Dunlop curve, the hairpin. This is looking very, very quick so far for George Boothby. He knows he's got the pressure on him. This is the very last lap of the Super Bowl. The only difference is between him and the car that went out first, Valentin Berrier in the 972, is that he knows what the gauntlet is. He's not throwing the gauntlet down. He's the one trying to pick it up and beat it. Nice and tidy through the Schumacher S's and then into Michelin. He is just looking so quick through here. You see him just guiding the wheel when we were on that onboard cam, using those slight adjustments to make sure that he stays steady out of the corner. And here is where it will be lost or won. Coming in through the final chicane, we're going to see how much of the curb will this Porsche use. Not as much as the Aston, but look at how steady that was. It was so steady. I don't think he lost any time. He got on the brakes nice and perfectly for the Coca-Cola curve as well. Coming out of the final corner, what's it going to be? It's going to be the pole. 53.255 for George Boothby. Almost 4 tenths. Almost 4 tenths ahead of the 56 car. George Boothby proving that he does not need more than one lap to beat everybody on the field. He's got 30 minutes. He beat you by 5 tenths. He's got one lap. He beat you by 3.5 tenths. George Boothby and the Yas Heat team are just dominating Nurburgring qualifying throughout this entire past hour, and it is not surprising, to say the least. Jesse Lee, can anybody shut this man down?
Folks, it's almost insulting. They join right before the quali session starts. They get into the car. By they, I just mean George Boothby. Malinowski is apparently busy right now running a different race. So it's all on Boothby. He comes out here and he says, easy. Qualifies number 1 in group, number 1 in Super Pole. And Jesse, it was like it was absolutely nothing.
I just want to point something out real quick, because Tom Bryant, our race controller, just pointed this out to me. 0.17 seconds ahead of the fastest, the second fastest lap in the open qualifying session, George Boothby, on his Super Pole lap. The second fastest lap in group qualifying, a 4.22.
Yeah, it is very much the case. Ridiculous. I pointed out in between the two sessions that Boothby was the only driver in the 52s with his 52.9, and it just was absolutely mental that he was able to do that. I wondered if maybe we could see that here, but that was, of course, after several laps of practice, and a 53.2 on a one-and-done lap is absolutely inhuman. We are going to have to get George Boothby in some kind of CAPTCHA test between now and the race. I am fully convinced that man may not be human.
That is pretty much what it is at this point, and it's something we've come to expect out of George Boothby as he makes his way into his pit box after the qualifying session. Tim, your first session here of qualifying for an endurance race. Super Pole, is it as you expected?
Well, I tell you what, I'm not sure what I was expecting coming into this for the Super Pole, but wow, that was absolutely amazing and highly thrilling. There are cars here, I was thinking, oh, you know, you come into Super Pole, more or less they're going to be in the similar sort of order, right? Well, minus Boothby down, I think this is almost a completely different order from the one that we saw initially, and I've got to say, I am very, very excited. Going into the future, though, if you tell me that anyone but Boothby is going to be leading these sessions, I'm going to have to laugh at you. Now, when you ask me, who do you think is going to come out of qualifying top, my answer will be Boothby. It has been an absolutely phenomenal performance from him today. From the get-go, he has looked like the most comfortable person in the car, and I don't doubt for a second that he will continue to look like the most comfortable person in their car. What a performance from George Boothby, and I must say, I'm thoroughly impressed with how all of the drivers have handled today.
Well, as Stewie pulls up some of the highlights from the open qualifying session, Once again, George Boothby taking the pole in the 992 Yasi machine. 56 Aston going to be in P2, and 411 going to wrap up that podium for the Super Pole session. Joe McCauley, Martin Grady, Grant Wilmot going to start on the second row as well. And that will be very happy by them. I think Joe probably not overly impressed with his lap overall, but of course, starting in the second row on a 10-hour race here at the Nurburgring, Jesse Lee, is not something that I would say no to. I'd be down about 90th on this grid out of 45 cars myself. So I think all of these drivers can be very happy with their performance here today through the qualifying session to get themselves into the Super Pole session. I think this is really going to show how strong this field will be over the next 6 months.
Yeah, it sure is. I think that George Boothby, I think Yas Heat have thrown the gauntlet down. I opened the show today talking about how they'd been practicing as a team. They'd been practicing independently in that Porsche to get this sort of head start and sort of learn the car. And I think they are going to be dominant at times this season, but it's going to be wonderful to see them race in this race from the pole and see what they can do with that, with all the traffic and all of that. Just a couple of other notes from qualifying before we move on. McCauley, of course, like you said, qualified fourth. Babin qualified the car fifth. He's got a 5 grid spot penalty. He will start inside the top 10 regardless. But what that does do is move Valentin Berrier up to a 5th place starting spot, and the silver 501 Audi team will get to start 6th instead of 7th as well. Of course, everybody under the 70 will get bumped up 1 spot. An excellent show today.
George, go slower.
Hello.
George Boothby joining us in the booth, guys. Dude, you're a 10th and a half up on the open qualifying session during Super Bowl. What the heck?
Yeah, I wanted to take it a bit easy, the Super Bowl, because I knew I had a little bit of time because the Porsche is so fast here and we have a good setup. So I wanted to not push too hard, but then I sort of soiled Sector 1 a little bit. So I thought, let's just give it a go. So yeah, Sector 2 was my best I did out of all the other qualifying, and then Sector 3 I knew it was a good lap, so I yeeted it a little bit, but I just wanted to make sure I didn't die. And yeah, it was a really good lap. Considering the sort of pressure of the Super Pole, I was really happy to get that lap in. And then my lap before as well was really good to get into the 52s. Really solid, happy with that. Yeah, just awesome. Thanks to Mache for helping with this setup, and I've done a lot of tweaking myself, and I don't normally do that because I'm terrible with setups, but I've managed to somehow
But you've been
make
getting more comfortable with the Porsche.
Oh yeah. I feel like I got there when it was the previous patch, but then since the 1.8, the new patch came out, I don't know. It's like this car's a new car, and I've been struggling. Had pace in some tracks, not pace in others, but I found that if I just if I put the time in, I get the results. So it's a bit of a grind, but I don't know. It's just part and parcel of how to get there, I guess. I wish I could just magically get on and drive like some people, but no, the grind is worth it.
Well, so I have 2 quick questions for you because I don't want to take up too much of your time. But first question I got, you Malinowski, of course, decided on the Porsche. So obviously, you guys were practicing with the Porsche end of last year, and now you've decided on the Porsche for the endurance season here. So was that a purposeful decision that is this going to be Yas Heat's potential car that you guys are going to be running, or is it just Malinowski's in the car, let's take the Porsche?
I think it's a combination of both. I absolutely love driving this car, even though I crash sometimes. That's just part of the car, I guess. You're always on a knife's edge of it, but that's, I guess, part of the enjoyment of it. It's you're always one tiny correction away from death. So, I just love driving it, and Mache's obviously got a lot of experience with it, and he understands the car a lot. So. I guess it makes sense to take this car in some way. I'm just happy I'm able to drive.
You've hit every lap of the Porsche right there. Because he's also a Porsche driver.
Yes. But I think I'm like personally, I'll take the Porsche again in a lot of championships. Probably still keep McLaren because I do like the McLaren, but I mean, I don't know. All the cars are becoming really close again with the BOP. It's awesome. Like the game is becoming amazing because it was there was a moment there where it was sort of a BMW fest, but now everyone's closing up. It's great to see. So I'm really excited for every championship going forward now.
So the other question I have for you is actually related to Super Bowl stuff, because we were talking about this at the top of the Super Bowl session, especially with the new tire model that's come out. Your tires don't heat up quite as quickly as they did, 1.6, 1.7 patch here in ACC, right? So talk me through like your tire pressures. Like, did you like purposely potentially like try and overinflate the tires a little bit so they'd warm up, or perhaps drop the brake ducts so they warm up quicker? Because you only get an out lap in a single lap. So I mean, did you make any adjustments for that?
Yeah, so thankfully this server right now was pretty hot, so the tires were already like, it was quite easy to get them up to pressure if you did a bit of brake warming and stuff. But yeah, what I did was I raised the tire pressures by 0.2 all round because, again, they're not going to be fully in the window from your out lap. So that helped. At the end of the lap, they're a little bit over, but you'd rather have more of the lap with them in the window, So
exactly.
It's just a bit of a sacrifice. But because of the way the tires work, even if you get like the perfect pressure going into your first lap, some cars react a little bit differently to others. So the Aston doesn't really affect that car too much, but I know from experience the McLaren and the Porsche, they're definitely a 1/10.5 off in the first sector, no matter what. Like you're going to be a 1/10.5 off what you do if you had another lap. But after that, it's just the rest of the lap they come into the zone. So you're always going to be, like I say, a 10th, maybe a 1/10.5 off what you'd be on your next lap after. But it's like that for most people. So everyone's got the same thing. Some cars react a little bit differently to it, like I say, the Aston, but still loses a bit of time. So everyone's in the same boat. It's just about, say, warming them up and just doing the lap.
George,
well,
I just gotta step in real quick. Your driving ability is absolutely disgusting. It must be horrible to race against you. I hope I never have to do it. But brilliant driving, excellent pole. I think Yas Heat has the target on their back now for this.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, yeah, let's go for it. I'll try and avoid as many missiles as I can.
Attaboy.
Well, the only other thing I got for you, bud, is that we're absolutely gonna need one of the fast pasta deliveries on this car for Nurburgring next weekend. So many Mount asked me to get on that.
Yeah.
But other than that, but yeah, like Jay said, a fantastic open qualifying and then a fantastic Super Bowl session from you. You and Malinowski are driving as a duo next weekend. Will that be correct?
Yeah.
All right. Well, who's starting the car? Do we know yet?
I don't know.
We'll decide about 20 minutes for the race.
Yeah, rock, paper, scissors.
Fair enough. Well, George Malinowski, I'm sure that we will talk to you or your teammate during the race at some point and figure out what's going on with you. But that 992, as Jay said, definitely a target on its back for next weekend. And good luck for the race and for the season, man. 6 months of endurance racing is no mean feat. So best of luck.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you so much, guys. Cheers.
All right, George. Well, Jesse, Tim, it has been a session, as we expect, of these qualifying sessions from last year. Absolute blast to join you guys in the box today. Tim, your first foray into endurance racing, and of course, you'll be in for a few hours next week as well during the race alongside myself, alongside Ryan Mawson, alongside Jesse Lee. Ted Edwards going to join us in the box for a little bit as well. And we might have a special new guest, John Dalton, joining us for an hour or so if he's available as well. Jesse, he'll be alongside you during the back half of the race. But myself and Jesse Lee, I believe, it's either me or Ryan Mawson that are going to be starting off the broadcast next week for the start of this race. I'm excited. How about you guys?
Well, I gotta say, if I wasn't already super excited to see how this endurance race turned out, I am now even more excited after just watching the qualifying. Personally, I can't wait to be in the booth next week. I'm very excited to see what happens now. Of course, it's not just one driver taking care of it, it will be the entire team will be working towards the goal of who will finish first. And I'm just excited to see the different strategies that come into play. I can't wait to see all the different drivers. I'm just so excited, basically, Mike. And personally, I can't wait for next week. I think it's very, very entertaining. And for my first ever endurance race, I'm glad it's Nurburgring who we're racing at.
And to follow up on everything, and I know what a lot of people at home might be thinking, well, George Boothby's team, Yaz Heat, has 3/4 of a second in the bag on everybody else. What's the point? They're just going to win. I'm going to lay some statistics on you. This isn't the first time this has happened. The pole sitter only wins World Tour races 35% of the time. Can Yaz Heat do anything about that statistic? We're going to have to find out. 10 hours is a long old race. A lot can happen, of course, in the field. That's the big thing for me. Regardless of what Yaz Heat does, the field is so tight this year. It is so strong and stacked. We've got pro drivers paired up with silvers racing in silver. It's going to be back and forth. I can't wait. It's going to be a brilliant season, all starting next weekend.
And of course, the race will kick off next weekend at Nurburgring. A quick glance at the schedule for the remainder of it. Silverstone next month in April, 8 hours of Laguna, 24 hours of Spa, May in 6 hours of Barcelona in June. Wrapping up with a 10 hours older in July. We hope everybody will be joining us next week, starting 1300 UK time, 1400 Central European time. And that is, what's -7, 5 a.m. Pacific time for you West Coast US people. And I will be joining you here. I'll be probably up around 3:30, ready to prep the servers, get everything going my time, because I'm out in that Pacific time zone as well. And we will join you from the box end. Big shout out to all of our sponsors for letting these races happen. Race Department, AK Informatica, helping us out with our servers. Big shout out to them. We would not be RCI without them. Sim Racing GP, part of Race Department. If you want to find more racing, because we don't do enough of it, you can go to Sim Racing GP, join a community, create your own community if you want, and do some racing. Fanatec, of course, is an affiliate of ours. Check the link for the description for an affiliate link. Get yourself some new gear and come on out and race with these guys. And if you're just not quite fast enough to race with these guys, go visit Driver61. There's a discount code in the description as well that you can get some discount off a driver coaching session with them. Absolutely amazing coaches over there. If you're if you're an AM or silver driver, or even if you're just looking for those last few tenths, they've got the coaches for you. You will pick up some time based on their coaching. Myself, I've been out there myself, done a little coaching, and it has absolutely helped me pick up time very consistently, especially with my braking. Very good coaches over there. And in the meantime, guys, come back for Monday for the Euro Masters Cup. Of course, we'll be back with that one. Ryan Gill and John Dalton will be taking the mic on that. And in just a few hours, Jesse Lee and Stewie will be back for Night Owl. So don't forget that. Ryan Mawson will actually be doing his first broadcast controlling the cameras today. Stewie will be joining Jesse in the comms box. In the meantime, we'll see you for Nurburgring next weekend.